because this knowledge, knowing this knowledge is very, very important. It's without reflecting on things that happen to you, why they happen, you get stuck, you fall into a trap. So if you think about this scenario, you've got 5 lataif. A lot of you have been doing the zikr from day one, and so you haven't really experienced anything different without the zikr, which is very good for you. But for past 35 to 40 years, I didn't do the zikr. So I could look at the both sides and compare them to see what the difference is between doing the zikr on the lataif, and without the lataif. So we need to look at it first to see what zikr you're doing. Obviously there's 5 lataif there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it's 2, 1, yeah, and 1 there. And we didn't, we practiced Islam without knowing anything about it for a number of years. But then there's a time when we did zikr on them and then practice Islam. So what kind of things do we do on them? What do we do on these 4 things which are part of our body? We say Allah. Is there anything wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with Allah. Allah is the name of Him. Is the foundation, basis of Islamic belief. If you take Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of it, then there's nothing in Islam. And if you take the name Allah, what's left of it? There's nothing left. How do we identify our Creator? So the name Allah is the basis of our belief. So that's one thing. So we can't say that what we do is wrong. So we can't say that. And we also say La ilaha illallah Muhammad RasoolAllah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. These are the zikr. And then we say Allahu. Allah, who is like a stamp. Allah is Allah, that's it. When we say Allahu la ilaha illahu, Ayatul Kursi, when we read that, say there's Allahu la ilaha illahu, al-Hayyul Qayyum. So we say repeatedly who, the word who, Allahu la ilaha illahu, al-Hayyul Qayyum, la ta'khuzuhu sinatun wa la nawm. So Allah who is also proven from the Quran, the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all these are the fundamental things that we say on this lataif. Then what is the lataif? First one is qalb. The qalb is mentioned in the Quran as well. Second one is the extension of the qalb. If you think about the wires, imagine this is the qalb. The wires are all connected. All connected. So 4 lataif there, 1, 2, 3, 4. They're all connected. So on one part of the wire, which is the main part, which is qalb, you're saying Allah. And then another part, which is a little bit further away from it, you're saying Allah. And then another part, which is part of the same wiring. Wiring means that circulates the blood into the physical heart. So what you're doing is, rather than just saying at one point Allah, you're saying it to another point. And what we learn from the Quran, the best worship is that a worship that is done from the heart. Isn't it? That's the best form of worship that is done from the heart, from the qalb. So you establish that there's nothing wrong with that. But the moment these things are identified, you start doing things, you start worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, things start becoming difficult. Things start becoming harder. Why does it get harder? Because there's a point, like I said to you before, there's a point when I worshipped without the zikr on these. It was just a random zikr. There wasn't any thinking into it. You just read namaz. And when you read namaz, your mind is somewhere else. You're not thinking about, when you're reading salah, that's what I'm talking about before doing zikr on the life. Because as I said, there's a period when I did the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before knowing anything about the life. And there's a period when I did zikr, when I did worship of Allah, like salah, fasting, listening to Quran, all these things. There's a huge amount of difference between the two periods. One period is easy. I found one first period without doing zikr on the life is very, very easy, straightforward, nothing at all in it. When you're in the form of salah, when you're praying salah, you don't feel anything. You just pray, and that's it. The only difficulty that you have when you salah, when you pray, is that you feel you don't have any appreciation of it. You just think, I'm just repeating everything, the same thing again. What difference does it make to you? But when you doing the salah with the life, it becomes harder. And doing all the other worship, the salah doesn't become harder. But what you're doing then is that when you're reading the salah, you're feeling things. You're sensing things. Because these points are starting to become hot. Boom, heat it up. You sense things, you start sensing things, your surroundings. You can't see it, but you can sense things. And then things that you can't describe to people. Because if you start describing to them, and because they haven't been through it, and there's no way they could ever go through it without doing this, zikr on the life, it's very difficult for them to see it from your point of view. Because I'm building up to explain to you the difference between doing zikr with worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the life and without it. So we've established that there's nothing wrong with what we are doing. The zikr that we're doing is perfectly fine within Islam. And then you're seeing certain elements, and you're feeling pain in these areas. You're feeling pain in your body. Certain parts of your body you're feeling really severe pain. All of a sudden you've been to a different place, and you're feeling pain in there. You're getting a headache. You're feeling pain in certain parts of your body. Or you spoke to a certain person, and you're getting pain. You try and listen to this carefully to what I'm trying to say to you. So when you were doing zikr on your own, you were fine, perfectly fine, nothing happened to you. But all of a sudden you go and pray in a certain place, or you speak to a certain person, and you start getting pain in your body. But that pain was not there when you weren't doing zikr. You could speak to anybody and everybody, and you could pray anywhere and everywhere, and it wouldn't make any difference to you. You won't feel anything. But ever since you start doing this zikr on these life, and you speak to people or you go to pray to certain places, you start feeling pain in your certain, not on the life necessarily, but you're feeling pain in certain parts of your body. But you're not doing anything different to what you were doing, when you're not saying anything different to what you were saying before the zikr on the life. The difference now is that you are doing zikr on the life. So why is that pain? Anybody know why is that pain? Why that pain happens when you do zikr on the life? Because you're not doing anything. We've established that what you're doing is not against Islam. All you're doing is the zikr on your body, on your part, certain areas of your body, which is encouraged, because if they're all, even if you do, if this is qalb, this is ruh, sir, khafi, they're all part of the same wiring. Just imagine, like I said to you, this is qalb, and these are the wirings that connect all the way to the qalb. This is not as if this is connected, this doesn't get connected to the heart. Because these are points that carry, it's like blood vessels.
Sorry, the physical qalb talking about, and then the wiring to the
spiritual.
Okay.
Spiritual, the ruh and the nafs, jism is both connected together. There's no, because the moment it becomes disconnected, that's what you call death. So just like the way there is visible things, there are invisible parts as well. The invisible part is the soul. You don't see it. But the soul has the same parts as the physical part. You see, there's a hadith part that beware of a believer's insight, as he sees with Allah's nur. So what's believer's insight? I mean, that's I don't want to drift too much away because that would prolong the conversation. But where does the nur come from then? Where's the nur come from? Nur means beware of this a believer's insight, because as he sees with Allah's nur. So where does the nur come from then? What's between we've only got two things in us. There's only two things. One is the physical and the other is the soul. So which one? So one of them is the nur. You can't deny that. So how do we know? So how do we know that it's a nur? How can we establish with evidence proof that it's nur? Nur is nur. Yeah? How do we know that it's nur? Okay, nobody knows that. Okay.
When has it other was not on a blue breath?
No, we said that still doesn't establish that it's nur. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blew spirit into Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, and then قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي, Allah's command. So Allah, قُلِ الرُّوحُ مِنْ أَمْرِ رَبِّي, and that still doesn't establish in some people's minds, and I'm saying in all of them, in some people's minds, that it's nur. Do you understand? So how do we know that it's nur? Well, that's part of it. But there is still elements that we need to do more to establish that it is nur, or it has very, very great qualities of it being a nur. So how do we know that? How do we establish that? How do we prove that? Okay, What is the body made from?
clay.
How do we establish that it's made from clay?
The Quran.
Yes, the Quran tells us that it's made from clay, but physically, how do we know, from scientific point of view,
Water.
how do we know that it's made from clay? So what do we eat?
The properties are wrong.
What do we eat?
Protein. Protein. And
No,
earth.
no, what do we eat?
Food.
We eat food. Yeah, roti or whatever it is that we eat. So where does that come from?
Earth.
From the earth, everything that we eat, every single thing, with the exception of water. Even water comes from the earth as well. Such as the earth, it creates, certain elements in it that becomes compatible to our body. Anyway, but what we physically eat, and we can't survive on the water alone. So what we physically eat, everything that we eat, it comes from the ground, from the earth. So even if somebody was to say, I need more evidence, Na'uzubillah, then what's in the Quran? Then say, okay, well, what you eat comes from the earth, so you can't, if you think that you're made from metal, then you'll be eating metal. So if you're only eating what's compatible to your body. So the soul, what's the soul survive on? The ruh. What does it eat? What's its food?
The worship of Allah.
The zikr of Allah, the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's his food. So what's the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is the ruh. So these two things, so once those are lit up, the soul is alive, it produces the nur. And then with that nur, that's when that hadith part becomes applicable, comes into action, that beware of the believer's insight as he sees with Allah's nur. Because the jism's not going to produce nur, the body's not going to produce nur. It's the soul that produces the nur. And then, because the soul and the jism are too interconnected, it pumps the nur into the physical heart, and then when the physical heart pumps the nur, when the soul pumps the nur into physical heart, then that mixes with the blood, and then the blood circulates through our body. Then that leads us to the question why we get pain. Do you understand now? So that leads us to the question where, before worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we didn't get any pain. We mingled with people, and we worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in any form or any way. We didn't get any pains in our joints, in our head, in our arms, in our head. But now that we are doing zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're getting pain. Zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the lataif, and we're starting to get pain. Are you still following? Are you following me, yeah? Still doing it? So what's causing that pain? Why is that pain happening now? Do you understand so far? So you should be able to put two and two together now to work out why the pain's now happening in our body. And that pain, it doesn't happen with everybody. It only happens, the level of pain is conditional on certain things. The level of pain is not the same as, why is it not the same? Again, see, that's what I'm saying, you need to reflect on these things and then come up with questions and ask. Because the pain, for example, Sakhaj would get, wouldn't be the same the pain that I would get or other people would get, or we should get. Or I could only go as high as that, but okay. So, and the pain you would get, or somebody else would get, or anybody else would get, would not be the same. Or feelings or sensations that you get will not be the same for everybody. Why is it not the same for everybody?
The amount of nur.
It's the level of nur, yeah, because that's the level of nur. As I said, you see, we only have limited time for this conversation, and you need to understand these things. Because if you don't understand, then you get trapped into shaitans and nafs's arguments, and they'll say to you, why is this happening to you? This must be a made-up thing. This is not right. Because you were worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before, and you weren't getting pain, and you're getting pain now. So unless you reflect on these things, you'll fall into a trap. So why is it that you're standing next to a person or sitting in a certain place, and if you were doing zikr on your own, you didn't feel any pain? You were doing zikr in a close area, and you were fine. You had no pain at all, and you were doing zikr with full concentration, and you had love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as I said, that's dependent on, that's conditional, and based on how much the shiddat of the level of nur that you have in your life. I mean, somebody who's doing zikr and been doing zikr with full concentration, with the love of Allah and RasoolAllah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, then their level of nur will be greater. It doesn't matter how many days or how many years or how many, it all depends on your own mindset, on your own love for Allah and RasoolAllah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Somebody could be doing zikr for 6 months, 2 weeks, and they could be far better than somebody who's been doing zikr for 6 years. Because their love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and RasoolAllah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is far greater. And when you have love for Allah and RasoolAllah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam greater, then your focus is equally greater as well in the zikr. Because it all comes down to zikr, the focus. So you don't have the level of your thoughts, waswases, it reduces. When you have love for Allah and RasoolAllah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, you don't see anything, because your focus is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure, and you know that what you're doing is not wrong. So anybody says, "Oh, you're doing this wrong," you're highly convinced, and there's nothing anybody could say that will change your mind. So your focus is completely 100%. The greater focus you have, the greater, it's just like somebody doing a course who, say for example, studying a certain subject, and somebody's really, really passionate about the subject. He loves that subject. But somebody who's not interested in that much, is only doing it for the sake of passing it, or for the sake of, for some other reason. But somebody who's really, really passionate, the chances are that somebody who's really passionate about it and loves that subject, he's going to do this. The chances are he's going to do better than the one who's just doing it for the sake of it. Is that right? Yeah. Because it all comes down to to how you feel inside. It's the same here as well.